Seeing your sketches instantly turn into detailed illustrations and photos just became a reality. Since Stability AI released SDXL Turbo, a distilled version of their main generative model trained for instant synthesis, real-time generator tools are popping up everywhere. In this video I am going to show you two of them, Krea and FreePik Picasso. At the moment both of these tools are completely free to use, but this might change in the future. First, let's start with the Krea real-time generator tool. So I'm just going to run this, and by default it starts with a couple of random things on the canvas, but we can clear this easily with the trash can here at the bottom. And first we can choose what color we want as the background. So here on the top we can either work with a photo or textures or illustrations to cover the canvas, but I'm just going to go with a white fill. And then straight away here at the bottom, we have a default auto-generated prompt that of course we can replace. Let's just type in something, let's say a tower we want to see. Now, the first thing I normally do is to start painting. And for that we have the paintbrush here on the left. Let me just pick a color, like a neutral gray color. We can adjust the brush size here on the left. And I am going to start painting right here. When I let go, I will see the result appearing. So if I do another brush stroke, until I let go and lift up my stylus, I'm using a Wacom Intuos to draw this, I'm not going to see the changes. So only when I lift up the brush, I'm going to notice the changes. And so far it's working quite well. Let's just say I'm going to draw another detail here. Let's see what happens. Let's just draw one more detail here and then start connecting them to each other. I always just give it a little bit of time to recognize what I'm doing. And of course, things will get more interesting once you start specifying your prompt a little bit, or if you start introducing maybe more colors. So for instance, if I choose maybe some red and I'm going to introduce that here on the top immediately, the result is also starting to get more interesting. But let me just jump back to the prompt and type in medieval tower. That definitely helped to make the result a bit more interesting. But maybe we can also specify that we want this to be an isometric top view, which is like a typical view that you would have in games. So if this was an asset that we are creating for a game, then it's very useful to include this in the prompt. But then we can also start adding things like the material of the tower. Maybe we can type in wooden tower. And again, it updated very quickly and we got a very interesting result. Now let's see what happens if we type in wizard's tower. It changes it slightly. Maybe we can type in magical medieval tower. Okay, maybe that added a little bit more detail on it. What if we say dark wizard's tower? Maybe we also say evil and also scary. Okay, it's starting to look more menacing while still keeping the original structure. So it's quite fascinating how the additional words can nail the direction that we are after. The more descriptive you are with your words, the better results you will get. That applies pretty much to all the generative AI tools. But in case of these real-time generator tools, it's also, of course, important besides the prompt to get your sketches as detailed as possible. And what's crucial to use is the AI strength here on the top right. Because with this, you can really specify how close you want the results to resemble your original drawing. And the further to the right you drag this, the more it's going to rely on the written prompt instead of your drawing. So if I drag this all the way to the right to 100, it pretty much doesn't really matter what I'm drawing on the left. It's going to just rely on what I wrote in my prompt. While if I drag this all the way to the left, it's going to look almost exactly the same what I drew. But as I start dragging it to the right, I'm starting to give more freedom for the AI tool, and it's starting to look more interesting and have more details. And I find it between 60 to 70 the best place to be normally. Now, when you reach a result that you like and you want a little bit more definition on it, that's when you should use the Quick Enhance feature, which you can find here on the right, Just click on that, and within a second or two, you will get a much higher resolution and more detailed result. This is actually a 1024 by 1024 image size, while the normal results that we see real-time generated is half the size. In case you want more control over how the enhance feature works, you can also open the image into the separate tool that they have here on Krea. So let me just show you this. If we do that, it opens up in a separate window. And here on the left side, we still have the AI strength option. The higher that is, the more hallucinations or freedom you give the tool. And then you can increase the upscaling factor up to 2.5, with the maximum image size being a square format using 2560 pixels. Now my prompt was carried over here, and that's still useful to keep in this area. You can even specify negative prompts if you want to avoid seeing certain things in the final result. And once you're ready, just click on the enhance option, and it will take longer, of course, because here we will get a much higher resolution result. And just to speed things up, I skipped ahead. It probably took around a minute to get this result. So we can see before and after, and we can scroll down and look at the details at the bottom as well. So it's quite impressive. It maintained the original structure and details, maybe changed a couple of things, like there's more stone used in the tower and less wood, but generally the details and the composition is very similar. Now, if you're interested in enhancing and upscaling images with AI, I would highly recommend to watch our other video where I'm giving a more in-depth review of another tool called Magnific AI, which in my opinion is probably the best available tool out there to create some very impressive results without losing your original composition. But let's jump back to our real-time generators, because there are still a couple of things to see here. First of all, we can change the style, which by default is set to no style. But if we switch to cinematic, for instance, it usually generates more details, but also makes your results more photographic. Then there is illustration, which generally makes it more like a digital art. Then bloom is another style of illustration, and product style generally makes things look more like real objects, again a bit similar to the cinematic feature. Now the effect of these styles are more noticeable if we ramp up the AI strength. So now we are on product, but let's just jump back to no style just so we can compare things. Then cinematic, illustration, and bloom. So no matter which style you choose, of course, your sketch and the written prompt is still important, especially if the AI strength is lower than 70. But just so we can explore additional options, I'm actually going to reduce the AI strength so it gets closer to the results that we have on the left. And I'm going to set this back to no style for now. Now, besides using the brush tool, we can of course also draw shapes. And I'm just going to draw another triangle here with this tool. And everything that you create on the canvas can later be amended with the select and move tool. So with this one, I can move this around. I can make it bigger or smaller. I can also duplicate it. So I can drop another one here on the right. And even the details that I drew originally can be selected, and I can also delete them simply just by pressing backspace on the keyboard. So for instance, we can just remove these few details and keep that section empty on the top. Now, besides the brush and the shapes tools, you can also place in images if you wanted to use those on your canvas. But what I find most fascinating is that we can use external programs as well on the canvas. So if I click on this, I could, for instance, select Photoshop, which is running in the background. And once I edit that, it comes up as a window, which we can resize here within the canvas. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to do because it's just not the same aspect ratio, but I'm going to roughly place it in here. And then if I switch to Photoshop, what we can do, so we can see side by side the two things that we are doing, I'm going to reduce the size like that. And as I start drawing within Photoshop, we should see the results updating in the background. So I'm just going to draw something here quickly that looks like a tower. This time, because I'm in Photoshop, I have a little bit more control over what I'm doing. So I have settings that I can adjust for my brushes, of course. but I'm still just doing something very basic. Let's just see how closely we will get the result to this. I'm going to have an entrance there. Let's just draw a few more details here and there. And while I'm doing this, of course, we can come back and make adjustments. So I can increase the strength or reduce it. And we can, of course, always go back and make adjustments to our prompt as well. Now, it seems like it's struggling a bit to fill in those details. So what I can do is to come back here and just pick a color. Maybe we pick a brown color with which we can fill in these details. And that already helped. We can see here on the right side that it is a filled shape now. And we can do the same thing in the middle. But since we are working in Photoshop, I can also just create a new layer for this. Set the blend mode to multiply, so I'm not going to lose the dark details that I already have. And I can very quickly fill in these details. Again, I'm not trying to be very accurate here. I'm just trying to get the results quickly on the right side that I imagined. So as soon as we have these details filled in, it's already looking much closer to what I imagined. Let's pick another color. This time maybe just choose something a bit more interesting like purple for the roof. And let's see if it can match that for us. It seems the color on the roof didn't work, so we can maybe just type that in here. By adding purple roof, it's much closer already. And now we can start experimenting again with the different styles. Let's see, cinematic, illustration, bloom, and product. I still feel like in this case the no style is probably best. And we can increase maybe the strength a bit just to get some more details, as long as it stays close enough to our concept. Now, another very important feature that might not be as obvious is that you can drag the result from the right and drop it on your canvas. And this is just going to be sitting on top of whatever you already had in the canvas. So you can still move this around and find what was underneath. So I'm going to just place this somewhere around here. And you can consider this feature a snapshot of the generated images from the right. So you can store these on the left and you can easily delete them if you don't need any more or replace them with other ones on top. So for instance, if I increase the strength and maybe change the style to cinematic and I like this result, I can just drag and drop that here on the left. But like I said before, I can move this around, I can find the other one underneath it, I can maybe even have them side by side now. Or simply have this other one moved out of the frame and again go back and focus on our previous one. Now let's switch gears and jump over to Freepik's latest real-time generator tool called Picasso with a K. And this is actually very similar in terms of features, although I feel like the user interface is even more intuitive and user-friendly. And just so we can compare the results, I'm going to do something very similar. So I will first describe what we want. By using the same exact prompt, I'll just jump back here and paste it. And then I start drawing with the brush tool. So I'm going to draw again the tower first. Then let's just pick the color for the roof. And I maybe make the size of the brush a little bit smaller, something like that. And then I can draw another roof here, another one on the right. And again, let's just draw some details going down. And these towers are quite crooked at the moment. Let's just connect them to each other. And then maybe have some details at the bottom as well, like that. Now what we got on the right is using the default settings, but just like AI strength in Krea, we have here a slider with which we can increase the imagination factor. Again, the higher this is, the more hallucinations and more variety or freedom the tool is going to get. And we can go all the way up to 100 again, or we can go down to 0 and see the same image that we have on the left. So I'm going to set this to around 60, 70. Again, I feel like it's pretty much the same sweet spot that we had in the previous tool. But what we also have here is a feature called Reimagine, which is quite cool. So this helps to create some more randomized results. It's not like the styles in Krea. This is a bit more random. Now, one thing I want to highlight here is that this tool seems to be even faster, because even without me letting go the brush, as I am drawing, I am seeing the changes showing up. So I'm intentionally drawing very slowly now, but you can see that the results or the image on the right is updating as I am drawing. So as I'm drawing a line here, it's going to continue draw on the right side as well. So it's even more impressive in my opinion. Now, just like in Krea, we have also the Enhance option, which is also a little bit faster and more reliable. This feature doesn't always work in Krea. Sometimes you have to refresh the window for it to work. Here, it feels like it's a little bit more stable and reliable. And then we can also copy this to the left side with this simple option here on the right side, and then continue working on the canvas, either with the Select tool, the Paint tool, icons, or we can also use the screen share option just like in Krea, and we even have the camera option, which will use the webcam of your computer. Now, to test this out, I'm going to change the prompt to the wizard who lives in this tower. There you go, wizard with a beard, although wizards most of the time have beards, but that is an impressive beard we have on the right. Let's just increase the size of this window, and you can see my green screen behind me. And the cool thing is that as I am turning my head around or up and down, we get again almost an instant update on the right side. So it's almost like an animation we are looking at here, and it is quite impressive. Krea can also do this, by the way. It's also an available feature there. But just like before, we can be a bit more descriptive with our prompt. Let's see what happens if we type in Evil Wizard. Immediately looks more menacing. Now let's try something that is a well-known weakness of most generative AI tools. Let's introduce my hand. Maybe I can hold the stylus. Let's see what happens. It's probably going to turn into a magic wand or a weapon in his hand. I'm just going to go back a bit. Let's try to position myself. Maybe I will hold it in my other hand. And I guess if we specify holding a staff, then it's going to work much better. Yeah, there you go. So we can get the composition that we want. And maybe if I turn my head in the other way. Yeah, it is following it quite well. And just like before, if we want to use one of these images, something that we like, just have to tap on the copy. And then, of course, it's going to be on top of the webcam. I actually think that the webcam is still there underneath. Yeah, so just like in the other tool, we have layers in a way that we can move things on top of each other, and then we can continue making changes based on that. Now, one thing worth mentioning is that while the webcam is running, you won't be able to use the enhance feature. So you will have to turn that off here on the left side, and then the enhance option will reappear again. So we can try it out. And in this case, it turned it into something that looks more like a photo, but we can be more specific and say illustration of an evil wizard with beard. And if we choose the enhance, I think this time it's going to be more similar to what we had there originally. Again, it looks more like a 3D render. However, I like it. Of course, we have more fingers than what we need, but this is something we could easily fix later in Photoshop if we wanted to use this image. And it's definitely worth pointing out and testing also what happens when you download the images. So first, going back to Krea, if I have maybe an enhanced image that I want to download, I can just click here on the download option, which is going to download that image straight away. And we can open it up in Photoshop and check what size it is. So it's 1024 by 1024 pixels. Now let's see what happens when we click on download in the Freepik Picasso tool. Now we have more options here. We can just download the actual result, or we can download the original visual prompt and the result side by side in a landscape format, or we can have it set up in a portrait format. And we can also download a video. Now for this, I'm going to switch back to landscape and let's see what happens if we use that option. And while we are waiting for that, I will also download the image and open that up in Photoshop just to test the size again. And we can see that this is actually half the size that we got from Krea. So here it's only 512 pixels. It's actually quite good. Of course, we could enhance this with tools like Magnific and we will get a lot more details. And in the meantime, the video has been downloaded. So this is the full workflow. It's a time lapse of everything that we've done. We can quickly go through the whole workflow, go back to the beginning. And yes, this is also low resolution. However, it's still a great way to record your workflow in case you need that for later reference.